The stars were dying, not literally, but the civilizations that orbited them were vanishing one by one. The Vakreen had come from beyond the galactic rim, and they brought only destruction. Captain Lee Doyen stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the latest reports flood across his screen. Another system had gone dark. That made 17 in 3 months. 17 worlds, billions of lives, all silent now. The messages always followed the same pattern. First came the distress calls, desperate and pleading. Then came static. Then nothing at all. "Captain, incoming transmission from command," said Commander Park Hyejin. She was his first officer, a woman who had spent more years studying war than most species had fighting them. Her face was calm, but Doyun knew her well enough to see the worry in her eyes. "Put it through," he said. Admiral Yoon Seojun appeared on the main screen. The old man looked tired, more tired than Doyun had ever seen him. "Captain Lee, I'll make this brief. The Council is pulling back all forces to defensive positions around the core worlds. You are ordered to fall back to Sector 7 immediately." Doyen felt his jaw tighten. "Sir, what about the outer colonies? There are still millions of people out there. Evacuation fleets are being deployed, but they need time. Time we don't have if the Vakreen break through to the inner systems." The Admiral paused. "I don't like it either, Captain, but those are our orders." The transmission ended. Doyen stared at the blank screen for a long moment. Around him, the bridge crew worked in silence. They had all heard. They all knew what it meant. "Captain?" Park Hee-jin's voice was quiet. "Your orders?" Before Doyen could answer, Lieutenant Kang Minho spoke up from the weapons station. "Sir, we're receiving another signal. It's a refugee fleet from the Thalaran system. On screen. The image showed dozens of ships, most of them barely holding together. They were civilian vessels, never meant for the cold darkness between stars. They limped through space like wounded animals. They're requesting permission to dock and transfer wounded," said Kang Minho. He was young, barely 25, but he had proven himself in every engagement. "They say they have important information about the Vakreen attack. Grant them permission. Hee-jin, organize medical teams. I want our doctors ready to receive casualties." "Yes, sir." 2 hours later, Doyen sat across from Han Ji-ho, a human diplomat who had been stationed on Thaler 4. The man's hands shook as he held a cup of coffee. There were burns on his arms, barely treated, and his eyes had the hollow look of someone who had seen too much death. "Tell me what happened," Doyen said gently. Ji-ho took a long breath. "They came without warning. Thousands of ships all at once. Our defense fleet tried to hold them. But it was like throwing rocks at a tsunami. They had weapons we'd never seen before. Shields that our missiles just bounced off of." "How long did you hold?" 4 hours. 4 hours and then it was over." Ji-ho's voice cracked. "But that wasn't the worst part. After they won, they didn't just occupy the planet. They started harvesting it, stripping away resources, taking people. It was like they were mining the world itself." Dr. Shin Ji-woo, the Indomitable's chief science officer, leaned forward. She had been listening quietly, taking notes. "Did you notice any patterns in their attack? Anything we could use?" Ji-ho thought for a moment. "They always hit the same way. Overwhelming force all at once. Their commander, they call him War Master Thulvan. He doesn't believe in fair fights. He just crushes everything in his path." After Ji-ho left to rest in the medical bay, Doyen gathered his senior staff. The conference room felt smaller than usual with all of them there. Besides Hyejin and Ji-woo, there was Yoon Taejin, the chief engineer, and Kim Sora, their head medical officer. "Show them what you found," Doyen said to Ji-woo. The science officer brought up a holographic display. It showed the paths the Vakreen had taken through conquered space. "Look at this pattern. They're not moving randomly. They're heading straight for the Meridian Gate." The Meridian Gate was a natural phenomenon, a region of space where jump travel was faster and easier. It was also the main route to the core worlds, to Earth. "If they take the gate," Hyejin said slowly, "they have a clear path to everything we care about." "Exactly," said Ji-woo. "And according to our projections, they'll reach it in 72 hours. Yoon Taejin, a gruff man who had spent 30 years keeping ships running, scratched his beard. "We could hold it. The gate is a choke point. One ship in the right position could control access." "One ship against an armada," Kim Sora said. She was normally quiet during tactical discussions, but now she spoke up. "That's suicide." "Maybe," said Doyun, "but what's the alternative? Let them through? Every hour we buy is another hour for evacuations. Another hour for the fleet to prepare defenses. The room fell silent. Everyone knew what he was suggesting. It went against their direct orders. It was probably a death sentence. But it was also the right thing to do. I won't order anyone to stay, Doyen continued. We have shuttles. Anyone who wants to evacuate can do so. But I'm taking the Indomitable to the Meridian Gate, and I'm going to hold that line as long as I can. Kang Minho was the first to speak. I'm staying, Captain. Me too, said Jiwoo. One by one, they all committed. Then Heejin stood and walked to the ship's intercom. All hands, this is Commander Park. Report to your stations. We have new orders. Over the next hour, Doyen gave every crew member the choice. Not a single person left. 400 souls on one ship, all choosing to stand against impossible odds. That night, Doyen recorded a message. He didn't know if anyone would see it, but he needed to say the words anyway. This is Captain Lee Doyen of the Earth Defense Force Warship Indomitable. In 72 hours, we will engage the Vakreen Armada at the Meridian Gate. We are one ship. They are thousands. Every tactical analysis says we cannot win. But winning isn't the point. The point is buying time. The point is showing them that humanity doesn't run. We don't abandon people who need us. We stand and fight even when the odds are impossible, especially when the odds are impossible. To my crew, it has been my honor to serve with you. To my family, I love you. And to whoever finds this, remember that we were here. We held the line. He transmitted the message to command, knowing they would probably court-martial him if he survived. Then he went to the bridge and gave the order. Set course for the Meridian Gate, maximum speed. The Indomitable turned and headed toward its destiny. Behind them, refugee ships continued their desperate flight. Ahead, the Vakreen Armada approached like a dark wave ready to drown the galaxy. But between the darkness and the light stood one human warship, and it would not move. The Indomitable reached the Meridian Gate 36 hours later. The space around them was empty, vast, and silent. It was the calm before the storm, and everyone knew it. Captain Lee Doyen walked through the ship, visiting each section. He stopped. In engineering, where Yoon Taijin and his teams worked around the clock to prepare their systems. The engine room hummed with activity, sparks flying from welding torches as they reinforced critical systems. How are we looking? Doyen asked. Taijin wiped sweat from his forehead. The experimental shield grid is online. Never tested it in real combat, but the simulations look good. We've also rerouted power from non-essential systems. Life support in empty sections, crew quarters, entertainment facilities. Everything is going to weapons and shields. Life support in crew quarters? Doyen raised an eyebrow. We're all going. To be at our battle stations anyway, Taijin said with a grim smile. No point heating empty rooms when we need every bit of power for the fight. In the medical bay, Kim Sora was organizing her teams. Beds were prepared, supplies were stocked, and trauma kits were distributed throughout the ship. She looked up as Doyen entered. We're as ready as we can be, she said. I've got triage protocols set up and trained everyone on emergency procedures. Captain, I have to ask, what are our chances? Doyen considered lying, then decided against it. Honestly, very low. But chances don't matter. We're doing this anyway, she nodded slowly. Then I'll do my job, you do yours. On the bridge, Dr. Shin Jiwoo was still analyzing data from the fallen worlds. She had barely slept, her eyes red from staring at screens. When Doyen approached, she showed him her findings. I've been studying the wreckage data from Thalaran ships, she said. The Vakreen shields operate on a rotating frequency. It changes every few seconds, which is why conventional weapons are so ineffective. But if we can predict the pattern, we might be able to time our shots to hit when the shields are at their weakest point in the rotation. Can you do it? Doyen asked. Maybe. I need more data, which means I need to see them in action. But if I can crack the pattern, we could increase our effectiveness by 30, maybe 40%. It wasn't much, but it was something. Doyen clapped her on the shoulder. Then we'll get you that data. Lieutenant Kang Minho was running combat drills with his weapons teams. The young officer had proven to be a natural leader, and his crews worked with practiced efficiency. Every missile was checked, every targeting system calibrated to perfection. Sir, Kang Minho said when Doyen arrived, I've been working on overlapping fields of fire. If we position ourselves correctly in relation to the gate, We can create a kill zone where multiple weapon systems cover the same space. Anything trying to pass through will face concentrated fire from every angle. Show me. Kang Minho brought up a tactical display. It showed the Meridian Gate as a glowing point in space, and the Indomitable positioned at the optimal location. From there, their weapons could cover the entire approach vector. It's good work, Doyen said. But remember, they'll adapt once they see our tactics. Be ready to adjust. Yes, sir. Commander Park Hyejin found Doyen in his quarters that evening. He was staring at a photo on his desk. It showed a woman and 2 children, all smiling at the camera. Your sister? Hyejin asked. Minji and her kids, they live in Seoul. Doyen set the photo down carefully. Sometimes I forget why we do this. Then I look at that picture and remember. Hyejin sat down across from him. The crew is ready, Captain. Morale is high, surprisingly. I think they understand what we're doing here. They shouldn't have to be here, Doyen said quietly. None of them should. This is my decision, my responsibility. With respect, sir, that's nonsense. Every person on this ship chose to stay. You gave them the option to leave and they refused. This is their decision as much as yours. She was right, of course. But it didn't make Doyen feel any better about leading 400 people into what was probably certain death. The council is furious. Hyejin continued. Command has been sending messages demanding we return to Sector 7. They're threatening court-martial. Let them threaten. We're too far out for them to do anything about it now. There's something else. Hyejin's expression changed. Your message. The one you sent to command. Someone leaked it. It's spreading across the human networks. Earth, the colonies, everywhere. People are watching, Captain. They're watching us. Doyen closed his eyes. He hadn't wanted fame or attention. He had just wanted to do what was right. How are they reacting, he asked. They're inspired. There are protests on Earth demanding the fleet come to support us. People in the colonies are refusing to evacuate, saying if we can stand and fight, so can they. Hyejin paused. You've become a symbol, whether you wanted it or not. The next morning, alarms rang throughout the ship. The Vakreen had arrived. Doyen rushed to the bridge where the sensor displays showed something that made his blood run cold. Ships. Thousands of them, appearing out of jump space like locusts. They filled the void, a wall of metal and weapons stretching as far as the sensors could reach. Count, he asked, his voice steady despite the fear in his gut. Still calculating, said the sensor officer. Estimate over 3,000 vessels, sir, ranging from fighter craft to dreadnought-class battleships, 3,000 against 1. The numbers were even worse than he had expected. Contact from the lead ship, said the communications officer. They're hailing us. Put it through. The screen showed a creature unlike anything Doyen had seen before. War Master Thulven was massive, covered in dark scales with eyes that glowed like burning coals. When he spoke, his voice was deep and filled with amusement. A single ship, Thulven said. You stand before my armada with a single ship. Is this a joke? Some human attempt at humor? Commander Park Hyejin stepped forward. This is the Earth Defense Force warship Indomitable. You will not pass through this gate. Thulven laughed, a sound like grinding metal. I have destroyed civilizations. I have burned worlds and scattered their populations to the void. What makes you think one small ship can stop me? Hyejin's response was simple and cold. Because we're human and we don't know how to quit. The screen went dark. For a moment there was silence on the bridge. Then Doyen spoke, his voice carrying to every station. All hands, battle stations. This is it. Remember your training. Trust your crewmates. And show them what humanity is made of. Weapons free. Engage at will. The Vakreen armada began to move forward. At the center of the approaching storm, the Indomitable waited. Its shields flared to life, its weapons armed and ready. One ship against thousands. The battle for the Meridian Gate was about to begin. War Master Thulven did not believe in wasting time. He sent 200 ships forward, a screening force meant to sweep aside the lone human vessel in minutes. It was a casual gesture, like brushing away an insect. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Captain Lee Doyen watched the approaching formation. His hands gripped the armrests of his command chair, but his voice was calm, steady. Let them come into range. Jiwoo, are you tracking their shield frequencies? Dr. Shin Jiwoo's fingers flew across her console. Yes, Captain. I'm recording everything. The pattern is complex, but I think I can crack it. Lieutenant Kang Minho's voice came through clearly. Weapons locked and ready. Just say the word, sir. The Vakrine ships closed the distance. They moved in perfect formation, confident and unhurried. They had done this hundreds of times before. It was always the same. The defenders would panic, fire wildly, and die quickly. But the Indomitable did not panic. Minho, you have the shot, Doyen said quietly. Fire. The space around the Indomitable erupted in light. Railguns fired solid slugs at incredible speeds. Missile launchers released their deadly cargo. Directed energy weapons, humanity's newest technology, lanced out in brilliant beams. The Vakrine formation expected return fire. What they did not expect was the precision and ferocity of it. Human weapons were different from what most species used. Humanity had spent its entire history at war, first with itself and then with anyone who threatened them. Every weapon system on the Indomitable had been refined through generations of combat. The targeting computers used algorithms developed in countless battles. The tactics came from a species that understood violence on a fundamental level. The first volley struck like a hammer. Vakrine shields flared and failed. Ships exploded or went spinning away, their hulls torn open. The perfect formation broke apart. Direct hits on 47 targets, Kang Minho reported, his voice tight with excitement. Confirmed kills. On the Vakrine flagship, Thulvin stood from his command throne. What happened? His tactical officer studied the displays. The human weapons are more effective than expected, War Master. Their targeting accuracy is exceptional, and they seem to have adapted their firing patterns to penetrate our shields. Thulvin's eyes narrowed. Interesting. Send the second wave. Double the numbers. And tell them to be cautious. 400 ships advanced this time. They moved more carefully, spreading out to avoid concentrated fire. But the Indomitable was ready. Dr. Shin Jiwoo had been working frantically during the first engagement. Now she had what she needed. Captain, I've got it, she said, barely able to contain her excitement. The shield rotation pattern. I can predict when they'll be at their weakest. If I feed the data to weapons control, we can time our shots perfectly. Do it, Doyen ordered. Jiwoo linked her console to the weapons systems. Now every shot from the Indomitable would be timed to hit when the Vakrine shields were at their most vulnerable point. The second wave hit them hard. Energy blasts and kinetic projectiles hammered the Indomitable's shields. Alarms blared as the defensive systems strained under the assault. Shields holding at 70%, called out the defensive systems officer. Regeneration cycles are keeping up, but barely. Return fire, Doyen commanded. This time the effect was even more devastating. With Jiwoo's frequency data, almost every shot from the Indomitable penetrated enemy shields. Vakrine ships died by the dozens, their armor no match for weapons that had been designed to punch through Earth's own military vessels. Commander Park Hyojin coordinated the defensive strategy. Rotate shield facing. Move us 0.7 degrees starboard. That puts their main formation directly in front of our heaviest weapons. The Indomitable shifted, a precise maneuver that took them out of the most concentrated enemy fire while bringing more of their own weapons to bear. Kang Minho's weapons teams worked like machines. Load, aim, fire. Load, aim, fire. The crews barely spoke, moving through practiced routines until every action was automatic. Engineer Yoon Taejin's voice came over the comm. Captain, the experimental shield grid is working better than expected. We can handle this level of fire for hours if needed. Don't get comfortable, Doyen warned. They're just testing us. He was right. The second wave pulled back, having lost another 100 ships. On the flagship, War Master Thulvin was no longer amused. This human captain is clever, he admitted. They have studied our tactics and found weaknesses. Very well. If they want a real fight, they shall have one. He turned to his communications officer. Send all ships a priority command. I want full tactical coordination. Attack pattern Theta 9, and activate the heavy assault ships. The Vakrine Armada began to move. This time it was not a screening force or a probe. The entire fleet advanced in coordinated waves, each group supporting the others. Heavy assault ships, massive vessels bristling with weapons, moved to the front. On the Indomitable, the sensor displays lit up with warnings, Captain. They're all coming, said the sensor officer, his voice shaking slightly. All of them. Doyen looked at the tactical display. Over 2,000 ships moving in perfect coordination. This was the moment he had known would come. The Vakreen had stopped underestimating them. Hyejin, I need options, he said. Park Hyejin's mind raced through possibilities. We can't fight them all at once. We need to use the terrain, the asteroid field to our port side. If we can draw them into it, we can break up their formation. They're not stupid enough to follow us into an asteroid field. They will be, if we hurt them badly enough first. We need to make them angry. Doyen understood immediately. Jiwoo, can you identify their flagship from the sensor data? Already done, Captain. It's the big one at the center of their formation. 3 times the size of anything else they have. Minho, I want every heavy weapon we have targeted on that flagship. Full spread, everything we've got. Let's make this personal. Kang Minho grinned. With pleasure, sir. The Indomitable turned to face the approaching armada. Every weapon system charged to full power. Missile tubes loaded their most powerful warheads. The railguns prepared their densest penetrator rounds. The energy weapons drew power directly from the main reactor. Fire, Doyen said. The concentrated barrage streaked across space toward Thulvan's flagship. The Vakreen defensive systems tried to intercept, but there were too many projectiles, too many different types of weapons. Some got through. The flagship's shields flared brilliant blue, absorbing hit after hit. Then one railgun slug, perfectly timed, penetrated the shield at its weakest point. The solid projectile, moving at a significant fraction of light speed, punched through the armor and detonated inside the ship. Explosions rippled across the flagship's hull. It did not destroy the massive vessel, but it hurt it. More importantly, it enraged the commander. Thulvan roared his fury. All ships pursue that human vessel. I want it destroyed now. The Vakreen armada abandoned their careful formation and charged forward in anger, and the Indomitable, as planned, turned and headed straight for the asteroid field. The real battle was just beginning. The asteroid field was a graveyard of dead moons and shattered planets. Rocks the size of cities tumbled through space, their surfaces scarred by eons of collisions. It was a navigator's nightmare, and the Indomitable plunged into it at full speed. Captain Lee Doyen gripped his command chair as the ship weaved between massive asteroids. Behind them, the Vakreen armada followed, their fury overriding their caution. Helm, take us deeper, Doyen ordered. Between those 2 large asteroids ahead, the Indomitable slipped through a gap barely wider than the ship itself. Several Vakreen vessels tried to follow. One misjudged the distance and clipped an asteroid, sending it spinning into 2 more ships. All 3 exploded in brilliant flashes. Commander Park Hyejin watched the tactical display. They're splitting up to surround us, smart. They're learning. Then we teach them another lesson. Minho, prepare firing solution Delta 3. Lieutenant Kang Minho understood immediately. They had planned this maneuver during the approach to the gate. Ready, sir. On your mark. The Indomitable suddenly reversed thrust, killing its forward momentum. Vakreen ships that had been pursuing suddenly found themselves overshooting their target. As they passed, the Indomitable opened fire at point-blank range. Ships exploded. Others, damaged and leaking atmosphere, went spinning into the asteroids. It was brutal, efficient, and very human. But there were so many of them. Multiple impacts portside, called out the defensive officer. Shields down to 40%. In engineering, Yoon Taijin and his teams worked desperately to keep systems running. Sparks flew from damaged conduits. Emergency teams rushed to seal hull breaches. Reroute power from the secondary systems, Taijin shouted over the alarms. I need more juice for the shields. One of his engineers, a young woman named Bae Suman, shook her head. Sir, we're already running on minimal life support. If we pull any more power, people will start suffocating. Then they better hold their breath. Do it. The shield stabilized, but barely. The Indomitable was taking damage faster than they could repair it. On the bridge, a junior officer named Ensign Bae Hyunwoo studied his navigation console. He was young, fresh from the academy, but he had a gift for reading space terrain. Captain, he said hesitantly, I see a pattern in their movement. They're trying to herd us toward that cluster of asteroids ahead. I think they want to trap us. Doyen looked at the display. The ensign was right. The Vakreen were moving in a coordinated pattern, closing off escape routes. Can we break through their line? Hyunwoo studied the screen. Not directly, but if we use the asteroids as cover, we could slingshot around that large one there and come up behind their formation. They'd be caught between us and the asteroids. It was risky, If they miscalculated, they would crash into an asteroid at full speed. But staying put meant death. Do it, Doyen decided. All hands brace for high-speed maneuvering. The indomitable Dove using the gravity of a massive asteroid to whip around in a tight arc. The crew felt the pull of acceleration pushing them into their seats. One person in engineering wasn't properly strapped in and slammed into a bulkhead, breaking his arm. But the maneuver worked. The Indomitable came out of the turn behind a group of Vacrine ships. Kang Minho's weapons teams didn't hesitate. They fired everything. 12 enemy ships were destroyed before they could react. The others scattered, their formation broken. Good work. Ensign, Doyen said to Hyunwoo. The young man smiled. Then his console exploded. A Vacrine plasma bolt had penetrated their shields and struck the navigation station. Hyunwoo didn't even have time to scream. One moment he was there and the next he was gone. Medical Officer Kim Sora rushed to the bridge, but there was nothing she could do. She looked at Doyen, her expression grim, and shook her head. Doyen felt something cold settle in his chest. Hyunwoo was the first casualty on the bridge, but he wouldn't be the last. The young ensign had saved them with his maneuver, and it had cost him his life. Captain, Park Hee-jun said quietly, we need to keep moving. Doyen nodded. There would be time to grieve later. If there was a later. Hours passed. The battle became a brutal game of cat and mouse through the asteroid field. The Indomitable would strike, then retreat. Use the terrain, then reposition. Every tactic humanity had ever developed for asymmetric warfare was employed. Dr. Shin Ji-woo continued refining her shield frequency predictions. Each engagement gave her more data, and her accuracy improved. By the 6th hour, she could predict the Vacrine shield patterns with 90% accuracy. Feed it to all weapon stations, Doyen ordered. Let's make every shot count. The effectiveness of their fire increased dramatically, but so did the Vacrine's adaptation to their tactics. War Master Thulven was a genius strategist, and he learned from every engagement. In the medical bay, Kim Sora and her teams worked without rest. The wounded kept coming. Burns from energy weapons, broken bones from impacts, radiation poisoning from damaged systems. She moved between patients, her hands steady despite exhaustion. One patient, a weapons technician named Ji Yunseo, grabbed her arm. Are we winning? The woman asked through her pain. Kim Sora didn't know how to answer. They were still alive, still fighting, but they had lost over 30 crew members and the ship was falling apart around them. We're holding, she said finally. That's what matters. On the Vacrine flagship, Thulven studied the battle reports. He had lost over 800 ships. 800! More than he had lost in his previous 10 campaigns combined. This human captain is remarkable, he said to his tactical officer. Under different circumstances, I would recruit him. But he has embarrassed me in front of my fleet. For that he must die. War Master, perhaps we should reconsider. The losses are significant and there are easier routes to the core worlds. Thulven's hand shot out, grabbing the officer by the throat. Are you questioning my judgment? No, War Master, the officer gasped. Good, because I have decided. We will commit every ship to destroying this human vessel. I don't care if we lose half the fleet. That ship must be eliminated. He released the officer, who stumbled back. Prepare attack formation Omega. Every ship full assault. We end this now. On the Indomitable, sensors detected the massive energy buildup as the Vacrine fleet powered up all weapons simultaneously. Captain, said the sensor officer, his voice shaking. They're preparing for an all-out assault. Every ship they have, Doyen looked at his crew. They were exhausted, wounded, running on determination alone. The ship was barely holding together. They had fought for 6 days straight, far longer than anyone had believed possible, but they couldn't last much longer. Status report, he said calmly. Park Hee-jun read from her console. Shields at 15%. Main weapons at 60% capacity. Hull breaches on decks 4, 7, and 9. Life support failing in sections B through D. How much longer can we hold? Tae-jin's voice came over the comm from engineering. Maybe an hour, Captain. Maybe less. We're held together by hope and determination at this point. Doyen stood. He looked at every person on the bridge, meeting their eyes. They were afraid, exhausted, but not broken. Then we make that hour count. All hands, this is the captain. We've held for 6 days. We've shown the galaxy what humanity stands for. Whatever happens next, be proud. You've earned it. He sat back in his command chair and gave the order he hoped would be his last. All weapons prepare to fire. The Vakreen Armada formed up in perfect order. Over 2,000 ships arranged themselves in attack formation, their weapons charged and ready. At the center, War Master Thulvan's flagship gleamed with menace. On the Indomitable, Captain Lee Doyen watched them come. His ship was battered, sparking, held together by the determination of its crew. The shields flickered weakly. Half the weapons were offline, but they were still here, still fighting. "It's been an honor serving with all of you," he said quietly to his bridge crew. Commander Park Hee-jin stood beside his chair. "The honor was ours, Captain." Lieutenant Kang Minho's hands moved over his weapons console. "I've got one more full spread in the magazines." "Let's make it memorable." Dr. Shin Ji-woo looked up from her station. "Captain, I'm picking up something strange. Jump signatures. Lots of them. Vakreen reinforcements?" Doyen asked, his heart sinking. "No, sir. The signatures are different. They're coming from behind us, from the direction of the core worlds." Hope flickered in Doyen's chest, but he didn't dare believe it. "How many?" Ji-woo's eyes widened. "I can't get an accurate count. Dozens, no, hundreds. They're still coming through." The tactical display suddenly filled with new contacts. Ships emerged from jump space in a coordinated wave. But these weren't Vakreen vessels. They were coalition ships. Thalaran battlecruisers, their hulls marked with honor scars from past battles. Verithian carriers launching wings of fighters. Kelson peacekeepers, their white and gold hulls brilliant against the darkness. And at the front, the largest human fleet ever assembled. Leading them was the Earth Defense Force 2nd Fleet, commanded by Admiral Yoon Seojun. His flagship, the Victory, took position directly alongside the Indomitable. "Captain Lee," the Admiral's voice came through clearly. "You held the line. Now we hold it together." Doyen felt his throat tighten. He couldn't speak for a moment. Around him, the bridge crew erupted in cheers. People who had been exhausted and resigned to death suddenly had hope. "Admiral," Doyen finally managed, "how did you get here?" "Your message inspired more than just humans, Captain. When the other species saw one ship stand against an armada, they remembered what courage looks like." The council vote was unanimous. Every species committed ships. Park Hye-jin was reading the tactical display. "Captain, I'm counting over 600 coalition vessels. They have the Vakreen outnumbered." On the Vakreen flagship, War Master Thulvan stared at the new arrivals in disbelief. For the first time in his long career, he faced a force larger than his own. "How is this possible?" he demanded. The council was divided, retreating. "They don't have the will to fight." His tactical officer spoke carefully. "War Master, it appears the human ship's resistance has unified them." "They are here because of what happened at this gate." Thulvan's hands clenched. One ship, one stubborn human ship had changed everything. Admiral Seojun's voice broadcast across all frequencies to both Coalition and Vakreen forces. "War Master Thulvan, you have a choice. Withdraw now, or face the combined might of the Galactic Coalition. You came here expecting an easy conquest. Instead, you found humanity. And humanity showed the galaxy that courage still matters. That standing against evil even when outnumbered is what defines civilization. You will not pass this gate, you will not threaten our worlds. Not while we stand together." For a long moment, Thulvan was silent. He looked at the display, calculating odds. His fleet was battered from days of fighting one ship. Now he faced fresh forces, coordinated and ready. He had never retreated before, but he had also never been in a losing position. "All ships," he said slowly, his pride burning, "withdraw to jump coordinates. We leave this system." The Vakreen Armada began to pull back. It was not a rout, but an organized retreat. They would return someday, Thulvan promised himself, but not today. As the enemy fleet disappeared into jump space, the coalition forces erupted in celebration. Ships sounded their horns and flashed their lights in victory. On the Indomitable, the crew collapsed in relief. Some laughed, some cried, some just sat in stunned silence. Medical teams from the coalition fleet transported over immediately. Kim Sora gratefully accepted their help, finally able to rest after 6 days of non-stop work. Repair crews swarmed over the Indomitable, beginning the massive job of fixing the damage. Engineer Yoon Taejin guided them through the ship, showing them which systems were most critical. Admiral Seojun transported to the Indomitable to meet Captain Doyen in person. When he stepped onto the bridge, every crew member who could stand did so and saluted. The Admiral returned the salute, then embraced Doyen. You crazy, stubborn fool. You disobeyed direct orders. Yes, sir. I expect to be court-martialed. Seojin laughed. Court-martialed? Captain, you're a hero. The entire galaxy is talking about the Battle of Meridian Gate. Humans stood alone against impossible odds and inspired everyone else to remember their courage. You didn't just hold this position. You changed the political landscape of the entire coalition. Over the next weeks, the full impact of what happened became clear. The Galactic Council, shamed by humanity's courage, reformed its defensive policies. A permanent coalition defense fleet was established, with ships from every species serving together. Ambassador Choi Sunwoo addressed the council, and humanity was granted a permanent seat on the Security Council. No longer were they the junior species, the newcomers to galactic society. They had proven themselves defenders of civilization itself. Dr. Shinji Woo's discoveries about Vakrine shield technology were shared with all coalition species. New defensive systems were developed based on her research. She became the leading expert on alien military technology, honored by universities across the galaxy. The Indomitable was towed back to Earth for repairs. The ship was too damaged to be saved, but the name lived on. A new vessel, bigger and more powerful, was built and christened Indomitable II. Captain Doyen was offered command, and he accepted. At the Meridian Gate, a massive memorial was constructed. It listed the names of every person who had fought there. The 112 crew members of the Indomitable who died were given places of honor, their names carved deepest into the memorial stone. Ensign Bae Hyunwoo's name was there, along with all the others who had sacrificed everything. 3 months after the battle, Captain Doyen took leave and returned to Earth. He visited his sister Lee Minji and her children. They ran to him when he arrived, hugging him tight. We watched everything, Minji said, tears in her eyes. We were so scared, but so proud. Her children asked him endless questions. Were you really scared? Did you think you would die? How did you know the fleet would come? Doyen answered honestly. I was terrified every moment. Yes, I thought we would die, and I didn't know the fleet would come. We fought because it was the right thing to do, not because we knew we would win. The youngest child, a girl of 7, looked up at him with serious eyes. But you won anyway. Yes, Doyen said, pulling her close. We won anyway. Later, he stood in the garden and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Vakrine were regrouping. They would return someday. But when they did, they would not find a divided galaxy. They would find a coalition united by the example of one ship and its crew. The Indomitable had held the line. And in doing so, it had shown the galaxy something precious. That courage, determination, and the refusal to surrender in the face of darkness could change everything. Humanity had earned its place among the stars. Not through conquest or dominance, but through standing firm when it mattered most. The story of the Battle of Meridian Gate would be told for generations. A reminder that sometimes, one ship and 400 brave souls could alter the course of history.